grade 9. In this video, we will be discussing projectile motion. So balikan muna natin ano nga bang ibig sabihin ng projectile motion. So projectile motion is an example of a curved motion with constant acceleration. So tulad ng binanggit natin last week, pa-curve yung motion ng object and constant yung kanyang acceleration. It is also a two-dimensional motion of an object thrown obliquely into the air. So kaya siya naging two-dimensional motion dahil meron siyang vertical and horizontal components. Reviewin din natin ang examples ng projectile motion. So ayan. So tandaan natin ha, pag projectile motion ay curved motion like these examples. And these are the parts of a projectile motion. So we have the object, which is the projectile. We have the path of the projectile, which is the trajectory. We have the height of the object, which is height or dy or h in the formula. And we also have the distance traveled by the object, which is the range or dx or capital letter R in the formula. Now, last week, we've already discussed the two types of projectile motion. So we have the horizontal projection and we have the projected at an angle. Last week din, nag-focus lang tayo sa horizontal projection. So for this week, we will be focusing on projected at an angle. So ano nga bang pinagkaiba ng horizontal projection at projected at an angle? So this is an example of projected at an angle. Okay? So, from the term itself, at an angle, meaning merong angle. Okay? Kung saan sinipa, hinagis, or ibinato yung object. So, unlike sa horizontal projection na straight path lang, nahulog lang siya, nag-slide lang siya at a certain height, okay? Walang angle involved. In this case, meron na siyang angle involved. So, meron tayong initial velocity plus the angle. Okay? Usually, nakikita itong projected at an angle in different types of sports like soccer, volleyball, basketball, and others. Yan, ito pa isa pang example. Now, kapag sa projected at an angle, katulad din ng nalalaro ninyo sa Angry Birds, di ba? So, depende doon sa adjustment ng angle, doon nakadepende ngayon yung layo, okay? At saka taas ng mararating or maaabot ng specific object. So, in this example, papansin ninyo, ganito lang yung angle nito. Okay? Tapos, nung nirelease niya yung bola, ayan, mataas yung naabot ng bola at nakarating siya dun sa kabilang side ng wall. But kung ganito naman yung angle ng pag-throw ng bola, mapapansin ninyo, hindi siya aabot dun sa itaas ng wall. So, tatama lang siya dun sa mismong pader. Okay? Now, there are different angles kung saan pwede nating ibato or sipain or ihagis yung bola. Okay? So, in this example, we have different angles. We have 15, 30, 45, 60, and 75 degrees. Okay? Now, the longest range, yung pinakamahaba or pinakamalayong pwedeng marating ng object ay maaari nating ma-achieve kapag ang angle ng pagsipa natin or paghagis natin sa object ay 45 degrees. So, like this one. So, kung makikita ninyo, this one, yung number dito sa baba, is the range in meters. So, yung 45 degrees na hinagis ay lumapag after 20 meters. So, ibig sabihin, 20 meters yung na-reach no object, which is, yun na yung longest, o yung pinakamalayong mararating na object. So, tandaan ha, kapag 45 degrees, doon paaring ma-achieve ang longest range. Okay? Now, tingnan naman natin yung ibang mga angles na nandito sa example. So, ang highest naman na height or maximum height na pwedeng ma-reach ng object ay pwede nating ma-achieve kapag ang angle ng pagsipa natin sa object or paghagis sa object ay 75 degrees. Ayan, oh. Lagpas na siya ng 8 meters. So, mga roughly 9 meters yan. Okay? Bago siya bumagsak. Okay? And kung mapapansin ninyo, meron ditong dalawang angles kung saan pareho yung nagiging range ng object. Okay? Magkaiba sila ng height. Papansin nyo, magkakaiba sila ng height, maximum height na na-reach ng object, pero yung range nila ay magkapareho. This is because complementary angles have the same range. So pag sinabi natin complementary angles, ito yung dalawang angles na pag pinag-add natin is equal to 90 degrees. So for an example, we have 15 degrees. Okay? So pag sinipa mo yung bola ng 15 degrees, ang marireach niya ay 10 meters. Na pag sinipa mo yung bola ng 75 degrees, kahit sobrang taas nung maximum height na marireach nung object, still ang magiging range niya lang ay 10 degrees. Because 75 and 15 degrees ay complementary angles. Same with 30 degrees. Ayan, 30 degrees, ang mag-reach niya ay nasa 17 meters. And 60 degrees. Mas mataas lang yung maximum height na ma-achieve ng object. Pero still, the range is the same. Okay? Dahil, katulad ng binanggit ko kanina, complementary angles have the same range. Now, let's proceed with the formula. So, for the formula for projected at an angle, we have 7 different formula to use. Okay? First, we have what we call VIX, or the initial velocity along the x-axis. Okay? This time, gagamit tayo ng inyong scientific calculator. So, dito, ang gagamitin natin is the initial velocity, and then you need to click the cosine, and then theta. Theta po ang basa dito sa symbol na ito, but this means angle. Okay? Next, number 2, we have the VIY, or the initial velocity along the y-axis. Ang formula niya naman ay initial velocity sine, ang basa po dito ay sine in trigonometry. So, we have sine theta. Nuulit ko ha, itong symbol po na to na theta, this means angle. Okay? So, mamaya i-discuss natin sa sample problem kung paano po yan masosolve. Okay? Number 3 is a formula for range. Okay? Which is the initial velocity times the time. Another, number 4 is another formula for the range. So, dalawa po ang formula natin sa range. So, this time, sa number 4, we have the initial velocity squared sine 2 theta, or the angle, divided by the g, or the acceleration due to gravity. Number 5, we have the dy, or the height. Okay? For the height, we have VIY squared. So, ibig sabihin, ito muna yun, VIY. Okay? Squared divided by 2g. Okay? Next, number 6, we have time, or t with an apostrophe. This is the total time. Meaning, mula nung sinipa mo yung bola hanggang sa bumagsak na ulit siya sa ground. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, nung na-cover niya na yung kanyang range. So, that is the total time. So, ang formula naman natin dito is 2VIX divided by G. Okay? And then, for number 7, we have the Tmax, or the time for the ball to reach the maximum height. So, ibig sabihin, mula lang sa paghagis mo ng bola or pagsipa ng bola hanggang ma-reach niya yung maximum height, ito lang yung formula natin. So, we have here VIY divided by G. Okay? So, we will be using this 7 formula for our sample problems. Sample problem number 1. A skater jumps at 28 degrees with an initial velocity of 12 meters per second. Letter A. How far is the skater from its original position? And letter B. What is the maximum height reached by the skater? So, let's proceed with our whiteboard. For sample problem number 1, dalawa po yung tinatanong. So, the range and the maximum height. So, let's proceed first with the range. So, that is letter A. Okay? So, tulad ng mga steps natin nung nakaraan, first step, you need to identify the given quantities. So, for the given, we have the initial velocity, which is 12 meter per second. And then we also have the degrees or the angle. So, ito po, yung theta, yan yung ilalagay nating symbol. So, theta or the angle is 28 degrees. And then, of course, huwag kakalimutan ang given na acceleration due to gravity, which is the constant 9.8 meter per second squared. Okay? Now, for this particular question, ang kailangan nating hanapin ay yung range or the capital letter R. Diba? Kasi ang sinabi, how far is the skater from its original position? So, gaano siya kalayo mula dun sa original position niya. So, that is the range. Okay? Now, we need to identify the formula that we are going to use. So, let's take a look at the formula. So, for the formula, we have two. Okay? Formula, we have number 3 and number 4. So, tulad ng binanggit ko last time, kailangan i-check nyo muna kung ano yung gagamitin ninyong formula. Kung lahat ba nung nasa given ay maaari natin gamitin sa formula. So, for number 3, initial velocity times the time. So, we have the initial velocity, pero wala tayong time. Okay? For number 4, initial velocity ang kailangan, the angle, and then the gravity, which is lahat ay nasa given. So, ibig sabihin, ang gagamitin natin ay yung formula number 4. Okay? So, we have here the formula. Range is equal to VI squared. Huwag pong kakalimutan yung squared sa taas. Sine 2 theta over G. Okay? So, this is our formula. Now, for our solution, so we have the R. VI, we have the initial velocity, 12 meter per second. Huwag kakalimutan is squared. Okay? Sine 2 theta is 28 degrees. Tandaan na, ang pinag-uusapan natin dito sa theta is the angle. Divided by the gravity or acceleration due to gravity, which is 9.8 meter per second squared. Okay. So, saan po tayo magsisimula? So, unahin po natin itong naka-squared. Okay. So, 12 meter per second squared. So, 12 squared, we will be getting 144. So, isa-square nyo rin yung unit niya sa loob, which is meter squared per second squared. Okay? Next, dito naman sa sign, hindi nyo muna yan pipindutin. Okay? Unahin nyo muna ito. 2 times 28. So, you will get 56. Divided by 9.8 meter per second squared. Okay? Next. So, ang gagawin na muna natin, kopyahin nyo muna itong 144 meter squared per second squared. Yan. And then, pipindutin niyo sa calculator itong sign. Hanapin nyo yung nakalagay na SIN sa calculator. Okay? And then, pindutin niyo yung 56. And then, equal sign. So, pag napindot nyo yun, may mahabang number doon na may decimal. So, ang kailangan lang natin ay 2 decimal places. So, round it off up to 2 decimal places. So, you will get 0. Usog ko lang ng konti. So, you will get 0.83. Okay? Tandaan ha, round off po tayo up to 2 decimal places. Okay, next. You need to multiply 144 times 0.83. You will get 119.52. The unit will be meter squared per second squared. divided by 9.8 meter per second squared. Okay? And then last step, you need to divide 119.52 divided by 9.8 meter per second squared. You will get 12.20. Ang unit ngayon, magka-cancel out tong second squared. Tapos ito ay meter squared. So, ibig sabihin dalawang m. Okay? Magka-cancel yung isang meter dito. So, you will get the unit meter. So, this is your final answer. Okay? So, balikan po natin kung paano siya isosolve. So, first, you need to substitute the given quantity. So, we have 12 meter per second squared. And then, we have the theta or the angle, which is 28 degrees. Okay? Next, you need to square. So, 12 squared, you will get 144 meter squared per second squared. And then, yung sign, dyan lang yan, huwag nyo munang pipindutin. Ang kailangan nyo munang gawin ay i-multiply 2 times 28. So, you will get 56. Okay? And then, after that, you need now to compute for the sign. So, ang gagawin ninyo, pindutin ninyo yung sign, S-I-N, sa inyong calculator. Tapos, i-type nyo yung 56. And then, equal sign. You will get a value na maraming decimal places. Okay? Kailangan lang natin siya i-round off up to 2 decimal places. So, the answer should be 0.83. Okay? Now, the next step, you need to multiply 144 times 0.83. You will get 119.52. Okay? Now, pag nakuha nyo ni 119.52 meters squared per second squared, you need to divide sa acceleration due to gravity, which is 9.8 meter per second squared. So, 119.52 divided by 9.8, you will get the final answer, which is 12.20. Maka-cancel out yung ibang mga units dito. Ang matitira is meter. So, this is our final answer. We are still at sample problem number 1. So, now, we will be answering letter B. What is the maximum height reached by the skater? Since pareho lang naman siya ng given with letter A. So, we have the initial velocity, 12 meter per second, the theta or the angle, 28 degrees, and the gravity or the acceleration due to gravity, which is 9.8 meter per second squared. Okay? Now, for letter B, we need to find for the height or the dy. Okay, so let's check sa ating formula na nasa screen. So we have only one formula for dy, which is number 5. So our formula is dy is equal to viy squared divided by 2g. So our formula is dy is equal to viy squared divided by 2g. Okay. So kung mapapansin nyo dito sa nasa formula niya, we have viy. Okay. So hindi lang siya basta vi or the initial velocity. So we will still be using the formula for number 2, which is viy is equal to vi sine theta. Okay? So unahin muna natin isolve tong viy bago natin masosolve yung dy or the height. So we have here viy is equal to vi sine theta. So we have viy, vi or the initial velocity 12 meter per second. Sine theta, we have the degrees 20 or the angle 28 degrees. Okay? So ang gagawin lang natin dito, itong 12 meter per second, dito muna yan, 12 meter per second. Okay. Tapos, pindutin nyo muna sa calculator yung sine 28 degrees or sine 28. And then you will get 0.47. Okay. Now, you need to multiply 12 times 0.47, you will get 5.64 meter per second. So this is our VIY. Okay, next. Dahil meron na tayong VIY, pwede na tayo mag-proceed dun sa ating formula. So you have here dy is equal to the VIY. So this is 5.64 meter per second. Squared muna natin yan. Squared. Divided by 2g. So you have 2 times 9.8 meter per second squared. Okay? So, unahin muna natin yung nasa taas. So, 5.64 squared, you will get 31.81 meter squared per second squared. Divided by 2 times 9.8, you will get 19.6 meter per second squared. So, ang last step na gagawin ninyo, you need to divide 31.81 divided by 19.6. So you will get 1.62. The unit now will be meter. So cancel out ulit yung ibang mga units. So this is our final answer. Now let's proceed with sample problem number 2. A soccer ball was kicked at 60 degrees with an initial velocity of 30 meter per second. So you need to calculate for the following. Letter A, the maximum height reached by the ball, and letter B, the distance traveled by the ball. Let's go back to our whiteboard. So, katulad ng ginawa natin kanina, first step pa rin, you need to identify the given quantities. So, we have the given. We have the initial velocity, which is 30 meter per second. We have the angle or the theta, which is 60 degrees. And then we have the acceleration due to gravity, which is 9.8 meter per second squared. So dito naman sa letter A, ang tinatanong or ang kailangan natin i-compute ay the maximum height reached by the ball. So we need to find for dy. So, check natin sa ating formula. Ano po ang gagamitin nating formula for dy? Isa lang po ang formula na nakalagay dyan for dy. So, we have dy is equal to VIY squared divided by 2g. Okay? So, ibig pong sabihin, same po siya nung kanina na ginawa natin for letter B sa sample problem number 1. So, tulad ng binanggit natin kanina, VIY, hindi po natin direct na ilalagay yung initial velocity kasi ang hinahanap sa formula is the VIY. So, we need to answer first or compute first for the VIY before proceeding with the formula. So, you have here VIY is equal to VI sine theta. Okay, so we have VIY is equal to VI or the initial velocity 30 meter per second sine theta which is 60 degrees. So, ang una pong gagawin dito, you need to compute for the sine 60. So, susulat lang natin itong 30 meter per second. Okay, sine 60. So, you need to type on your scientific calculator sine 60. You will be getting 0.87. And then you need to multiply 30 times 0.87, you will get 26.1 meter per second. Now, dahil meron tayong VIY, we can now proceed with dy. Okay? So, dy is equal to VIY, so yung 26.1 meter per second, you need to square. Squared. Divided by 2 times 9.8 meter per second squared. Okay? So, uunahin natin yung nasa taas. So, 26.1 squared, you will get 681.21 meter squared per second squared. Divided by 2 times 9.8, you will get 19.6 meters meter per second squared. Okay? And then last step, you need to divide 681.21 divided by 19.6. You will be getting 34.76. The unit now will be meter kasi maka-cancel out po ulit yung second squared and then yung isang meter. So this is our final answer for the maximum height. Now let's proceed with letter B. So still we have the same given. So we have the initial velocity 30 meter per second, the theta or the angle 60 degrees, and the acceleration due to gravity which is 9.8 meter per second squared. Okay? Now, for letter B, ang inanap naman natin is the distance traveled by the ball. So, pag sinabi natin distance traveled by the ball, we are talking about the range or capital letter R. Check natin ulit sa ating formula. So, wala tayong given na time. So, ang gagamitin nating formula will be number 4. So, you have the formula R is equal to the initial velocity squared sine 2 theta divided by G. Okay? So, sa solution natin, so we have R. So, substitute muna natin yung mga given quantity. We have the initial velocity which is 30 meter per second. This is squared. Sine 2, the theta is 60. Okay? Divided by G which is 9.8 meter per second squared. Okay. Now, unahin natin yung 30 squared. So, 30 squared is equal to 900 meter squared per second squared. Sine, so you need to multiply 2 times 60, you will be having 120 divided by 9.8 meter per second squared. Okay, next. Copyahin muna natin itong 900. So, we have 900 meter squared per second squared. And then, computin nyo muna to. So, i-type nyo po sa calculator yung sine, S-I-N, 120, and then equal sign. Tulad na binanggit ko kanina, round it off up to 2 decimal places. So, you will be getting 0.87. Okay? And then, divided by the gravity, which is 9.8 meter per second squared. Okay. Next, you need to multiply 900 times 0.87. You will get 783 meters squared per second squared. Divided by 9.8 meter per second squared. So, last step, you need to divide. 783 divided by 9.8, you will be getting 79.90. Cancelled out yung second squared at saka yung isang meter. So, you will be using the unit meter. So, we have the final answer which is 79.90 meters. Thank you for listening. I hope you have learned something for today. If you have any other questions, you may chat in our Facebook group chat or comment in our Facebook